In this session, we will be cooking a hot and sour salmon dish served with a fresh, vibrant, crunchy salad. The salmon fillet we will be using will be marinated in advance to provide additional flavor. And the salad that we'll be serving this with is inspired by some Southeast Asian flavors, giving a real zing and freshness to the dish as a whole. This recipe will take about an hour and a half to prepare, including some marinating time. I have the ingredients for our recipe in front of me. So firstly, the salmon fillets, 2 of them, they have been skinned. Then the marinades, 2.5 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, and half a teaspoon of honey. The dressing ingredients, rice wine vinegar, 4 tablespoons, 3 teaspoons of caster sugar, 3 teaspoons of sunflower oil, a little bit of lime juice, and a red chili. I've got some cashew nuts to start the salad. We've got 70 grams of cashew nuts, some salt flakes, half a teaspoon, and half a teaspoon of black mustard seeds. And then the other salad ingredients, some fresh coriander. We'll need about half a tablespoon once it's been chopped down. 110 grams of bean sprouts, some water chestnuts. This is about half a small tin. Some mange tout, 55 grams, and finally another small chili which we'll chop and put through the salad. There are a number of theory objectives involved in this recipe. Firstly, cooking salmon fillets. So how we just check prepared well. We're going to be marinating these, and then the cooking of the salmon, making sure that we get a nice caramelization from pan searing and then onto a tray and into the oven, and baking them so we get a really lovely pink finish to the center of our salmon, making sure that it doesn't dry out. We're also going to look at some knife skills as part of the salad. We're going to be making a nice hot and sort of sour dressing, and then balancing the dish with texture and overall flavor. We're going to start with the marinade for our salmon. So I'm going to mix in my sesame oil to the bowl, my soy sauce, and finally the honey. Scrape that through. Honey will add a nice little bit of sweetness against the saltiness of the soy. We'll just give that a whisk together just to combine, and just get that last little bit of honey through, like so. We'll move that to the side, and we'll just have a quick look at our salmon fillets. So we've bought them essentially prepared. They've been skinned for us by our fishmonger, but it's always good just to have a little look over. We want to make sure that there's no bones. It will have been pin boned along here. So just feel over the fillet, make sure you can't feel anything. If anything didn't look particularly edible then, or fresh, say, we could just trim off the outside, but these look great. So I'm going to pop these into my marinade. Bring that back in front of me, and then perhaps just with your spoon, we can just turn those over, make sure that they're well coated, and we're going to leave these for about an hour if we can do. Minimum 30 minutes to provide flavor, but up to an hour to really get the best out of the marinade. This needs to go into the fridge ideally now to stay nice and cold. You can loosely cover it with a bit of parchment on the surface of the fish, or a bit of cling film over the bowl, and leave it for its marinating time. While the fish is marinating in the fridge, we're going to start with the preparation of the salad, and this involves a little bit of knife skills. I'm going to start my chili. This is a small red chili, and I'm just going to slice it. I'm going to keep the seeds in. I'm going to slice it into small, thin rounds, so just right across the chili. If you had a larger chili, or if you wanted a little less heat in your salad, then by all means you can de-seed it first. So just nice thin little slices and into the bowl. I want to run my knife through this. Coriander is quite a fresh herb, so we're going to be careful not to bruise it. Make sure your knife is nice and sharp. And I'm just going to bundle the coriander up and then a sort of rolling chop all the way through. Lovely kind of smell and fragrance that comes off coriander. And we're just going to kind of turn and keep chopping down. Sometimes we use a cross chop action, so you can just pivot around the point of the knife and break it down. And it doesn't need to be too fine, otherwise that's where we end up bruising the herb. Okay, that's about as far as I need to go. I'm not going to put this in with the salad just yet. I'm going to put it into a bowl on its own, and we will keep this covered with a little bit of damp paper, and we will keep it in the fridge if possible, or certainly covered with damp paper until we're ready to use it, just so that the herb stays as fresh as it can. Next we have our mange tout to cut, and we're going to cut these into the thin strips known as julienne. I'm just going to again use my nice knife and cut all the way through the vegetable into those little kind of almost matchstick size strips, so almost as thin as you can. And now I'm going to just carry on and cut through the pile of mange tout that I have. Next, we're going to look at our bean sprouts, and we just want to make sure that these are as fresh as possible. If you would like to just refine this a little bit further, we've got our beautiful shoot at the top here, but you can see this sort of tail end, the root end. Sometimes we just pick those off to make sure that bean sprouts look as fresh as possible and vibrant when we eat them. So it's an extra step if you would like to go through that. The final bean sprout going in, and then we can move on to our water chestnuts. These are pre-sliced. Sometimes they'll be, you could just leave them as slices like that. I'm just going to run my knife again through them, so a little bit more knife skills at this stage. The last water chestnut just to go with the others. There we go. And again, just to go into the bowl with the rest of the salad ingredients. There we go. We're now going to think about assembling our dressing. So into the saucepan, I'm going to add my rice wine vinegar, and to that some sugar that we measured earlier. And we're also going to add some chili for some extra kind of heat at this stage. I'm just going to split the chili down the center, and I'm going to put this in whole. Now, if you wanted, we've already got a little bit of chili in the salad, you could cut this into smaller dice and leave it into the finished dressing. I'm going to add it to the pan, allow a flavor to infuse, and then I'm going to remove it later. The one ingredient that we're going to hold back is the sunflower oil. So I'm going to put this onto the heat, dissolve down the sugar, let it cool down, and then finally we'll add the sunflower oil. Just going to swirl the pan, give it a little stir if you want, but you can see those last few grains of sugar are pretty much dissolved. I get a real pungency and smell coming from the vinegar as it warms through. And so I know I'm going to have lots of flavour in there from that chili and the sweetness of the sugar as well. We're going to turn this off now. I'm going to leave it to cool, and then the sunflower oil can go in. We have our salmon marinating in the fridge, and we've prepared some of our salad ingredients and the start of our dressing. We've got a few more added ingredients to finish off now, and this involves just toasting off some cashews with some mustard seeds and some sea salt in a pan, which is what I'm going to do now. So I have a pan heating gently on the stove. I'm going to add my cashew nuts. And we're just going to begin toasting these. So just remember that nuts have a lot of oil in them, so they'll take a little bit of time to heat up, but once that oil gets hot, they will start to color quite quickly. So keep control, and just as you begin to see a bit of color coming on, keep them moving. We're starting to get a little bit of color onto the surface of the cashews, so they're really heating up inside. So we need to make sure that we're kind of keeping them moving and give them a toss through in the pan, or you could have something to stir. Obviously leave them to settle again, just to get a little bit more color, but that evenness of heating now is really important, and making sure that it doesn't go too far. So the cashews now are almost to the color that I want them. I'm going to think about adding my mustard seeds now and sea salt. This is flaky sea salt. If they're very big flakes, just crush it as it goes in, just to allow them to distribute through the salad later in a nice even fashion. What we're looking for is those mustard seeds to heat and start to pop. So again, allow them to sit on the base of the pan, but all the time thinking about the cashews and the color that they're taking on as well. We're now getting some of our mustard seeds popping. So I'm happy with the color of the cashews. So I'm going to remove this now from the hot pan, so just back into a bowl, and we'll leave those to cool down before adding to the salad. Preheat your oven to 180 degrees Celsius, fan assisted, and line a baking tray with a bit of non-stick paper. We're now ready to think about the cooking of the salmon. So it's been marinating in the fridge. It's going to have taken on lots of lovely flavor. The marinade has done its job. So I'm just going to lift out carefully and just dry the salmon. We're going to try and get a nice kind of caramelization on the surface of the fish. So we don't want too much kind of liquid left. So just pat it dry with a bit of kitchen paper and take all of that sort of excess moisture away from the surface of the fish. And then we can think about heating our pan and getting this cooking. Having dried the fish from its marinade, it's now time to cook. And cooking fish, we're going to start this in a frying pan. Yourself a good non-stick frying pan, preferably something with a little bit of a heavy base to it that transfer heat nice and easily. You'll need yourself a fish slice. We've got our oven preheated, 180 degrees for a fan oven, and we've got a baking tray ready to put our fish onto once we've caramelized it in the pan. And that's been lined with a piece of non-stick baking paper. The first thing I'm going to do is to place my pan onto a medium-ish heat. So I've got my non-stick pan on the heat. It's warming through. I can just feel a little bit of heat coming to it. And I'm going to add a drizzle of just flavorless oil, so sunflower or vegetable oil, to the pan. The fish has that marinade on, so there's a little bit of soy sauce and the sesame oil and the honey in there. So we just need that little extra oil to make sure it doesn't stick to our pan. Just before we introduce the fish into the pan, I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of fine salt onto the surface. We have some salt in the marinade, so there is a degree of saltiness on there already, but a little bit of extra sauce will just kind of crust into the fish as it caramelizes. The heat of our pan, I can feel that as I rest my hand over the top, and I'm going to just introduce this into the pan. This is the bone side of the fish, which is slightly more curved and a little bit more presentable. This is the skin side. So I want to place this bone side down. I'm just going to hold the fish so I can pick up some of that oil and just place it away from me so anything splashes that way. Let's get the other one in there as well. I'm just going to lower the heat now it's sizzling and pick up some of that oil as it goes. Having lowered the heat, we can just hear it die down a touch. I definitely need sizzle, but just not too much, so I'm kind of cooking with my ears. Fish is a delicate thing to cook, so we want to caramelize and color, but without kind of drying the surface. My aim here is to get some color on that presentation side. I'm not looking to cook the fish through at this stage. We're going to do that in the oven. So just kick beneath, and once you have that nice kind of golden or deep golden color, depending on the heat in your pan, this caramelization process might not take too long. I'm happy as we turn that over with that color, so I'm just going to flip onto the other side. There we go. Briefly seal. And then I'm going to transfer this onto my baking tray. So up and on, and then the other one. Just be careful because everything's obviously very hot there. So just onto our tray, and now we can think about putting this into the oven. Let's put the fish in the oven now. So we'll just go into the center there. The door, and we'll check our salmon after about 8 minutes. It may take up to 10 minutes for thicker fillets. Let's bring the salad together. So firstly, the dressing. I'm just going to remove the chili, which has been infusing flavor, and we need to add in our oil. So that's the oil gone in. We'll just give that a bit of a mix through. And then to that, we're going to add some lime juice. Remember, don't add it all at once. That was our lime juice squeeze, but we want a balance of flavor. So again, give that a stir. Dig down, have a little taste. Does it have enough acidity to counter the vinegar and the sweetness from the sugar, the rice wine, and that nice kind of dressing oiliness? It's a little bit sweet on my tongue, so I'm going to add a touch more lime juice through. Actually, we'll go for all of that just to get a good zing. Again, one more taste. Much better. Nice acidity coming through, and then sweetness second. I'm going to add some dressing to our salad now. So just dig down or stir as you go. Don't over, you can add more. I'm going to add my cashews like so. If you wanted to, you could crush the cashews up in advance. And then finally, we're going to add in some fresh coriander. You can always hold back a little bit just to sprinkle over the salad. We now need to toss this through. I'm going to use 2 spoons. You could use some very clean hands or a pair of gloved hands if you wanted. We want to see a nice glistening salad, dressing coating everything without being too much. And we're going to have a taste of this before we serve it. Flavor-wise, I've got a nice heat coming through, but I don't have enough acidity or dressing coating everything. So another couple of spoons, maybe even 2.5, just to get a bit more balance of flavor. One more mix, and hopefully that will be the right taste that we're looking for. We're going to check our salmon now to see if it is close to being cooked. So I'm just going to remove it nice and carefully from the oven. Up, and we'll place it on the surface here. We can hear it fizzing and sort of frying away there. We can also see some of the white protein coming out from the edges of the fish here. That's a really good indication that it's cooked and may not need any longer. Where you've got some of the cracks and the fillets opening up, that's a good place to sort of start to have a look on the inside. And the other thing is to kind of feel it. We want to feel whether there's a firmness around the edges of the fish and towards the center. So if I just carefully, my fingers are fairly resistant to heat, but if I have a look in here, can we see that the fish is starting to flake apart, certainly at this end nicely. On the other side here, it feels a little bit squidgy, and as I open it up on the inside, it's just looking a little bit on the rare side. We want that fish to be able to flake apart nicely. I'm just going to pop this back into the oven for 1 more minute, and then we're going to have nicely cooked fish. The fish has now come out of the oven again, and I've gone through my checks and I can feel both sides of the fillets are evenly sort of not firm, but certainly feeling set. And as I squeeze, you can just see this fillet starting to kind of flake. It's a really good indication that that heat has transferred through to the center of the fish. So I'm happy this is cooked. When we break this open later, we should see a nice kind of pink tinge in the middle, which is what we can detect by breaking those fillets slightly. Let's take the fish, which is now cooked, off the hot tray. It's plating up time now, so I'm going to add some of my salad to the first plate. So just always just nice and light as it goes down. Try not to kind of crush everything. Do dig down or stir the salad again so you're picking up some of those salt and mustard seeds that are at the bottom. Tiny bit more of those cashews just so that we're dividing it nice and evenly. And then my salmon fillet. I'm just going to use a fish slice again. The salmon we wanted nice and flaky, so just be careful as you place the fish that you're supporting it. And then we can add a little bit of that fresh chopped coriander just to finish off the plate like so. I'm just going to do the second plate now. Let's have a look at what we want from the inside of our salmon fillet to know that it's nicely cooked. So we've got our beautiful salad assembled there. So I'm just going to get into the fillet. We talked about nice flakiness earlier. So I'm just going to cut in, and what we're after is that kind of pink tinge. You can see kind of a slight softness to the flesh at the bottom here. It's flaking nicely. It's got a pinkness to it. That's exactly what we're looking for to know that our salmon is cooked to a medium level. From the salad, we went through some knife skills, so it's nice and kind of even between the different vegetables that are in there. We've got our cashews, which we toasted. They've got a color that's going to provide flavor without going too dark and therefore bitter. We had our nice little chilies. Remember, you're welcome to de-seed those if you don't like too much heat in there. And we've got that fresh coriander, which is going to give that fragrance to our dish. Remembering also seasoning-wise, we had our salt in there, making sure that that goes through everything. Tasting that salad before it goes onto the plate is key to make sure that you're happy with the balance of flavor. In this session, we have looked at salmon fillets. We have caramelized them in a pan, and then we baked them in the oven, identifying nicely cooked. We marinated that salmon in advance as well, providing extra flavor. And then we assembled a beautiful, fresh and zingy salad, practicing a few of our knife skills and thinking about how we balance that dressing between hot, sour, sweet and salty. In front of you should have 2 plates of delicious looking food. I hope you've learned a lot from this unit and it's built your confidence with salmon cooking.